Hey YouTube, I'm Blaze, and this is the 5th episode of Mythbusters, where we're going to be going over how long it takes each hero in Battlefront 2 to kill a 750 point enemy. So for tests I used Kylo, and then I also used Luke. This is of course directly correlated to the DPS of each hero, which I'll also be going over, and that is how I'm going to rank them. And I will also be testing out different abilities of some heroes, like for example Vader's Focused Rage, and then without his Focused Rage as well, just to see how much that improves him, and obviously where it goes on the total leaderboard, because I also want to see what max damage heroes do as well as their regular damage. In total, there are 27 entries into this list, and an extra teaser for potential reinforcements video exactly like this one. So if you'd like to see that, make sure to leave a comment below and stay subscribed. Kicking it straight off with number 27, we have Bossk's micro grenades. Now this might surprise you, because Bossk's micro grenades seem to be extremely effective with dispatching enemies. However, you will notice that there is very large downtime in between each shot, and downtime, as we've covered in the last episode, means that you get a much lower DPS. And that's not to say that Bossk's micro grenades aren't effective at dispatching enemies. They are of course very useful, as you don't have to aim as much. They do deal quite round numbers, so you can end up two-shotting, let's say, assaults, officers and specialists, and coupled with that, Bossk can do his floaty thing where he jumps up and is therefore much harder to hit. Bossk took 6 seconds to kill Luke with a DPS of 125, which is even on the slower side of things for regular trooper weapons. So really it's not that great DPS wise, but as I said, his micro grenades aren't actually that bad at all, it's just their overall DPS. Then, with a drop of 1.98 seconds, we have Emperor Palpatine, who took a time of 4.02 seconds with a DPS of 186. Now for Palpatine, this is very strong, because like Bossk, his advantages come in other ways as a DPS support, who specialises in crowd control as opposed to singular target DPS, which is what this test is representative of. And in this particular instance, I looked at Palpatine's max DPS by throwing his Dark Aura and his Chain Lightning into the mix. Regularly, Palpatine deals 50 damage per second with one hand and 100 damage per second with two hands, so actually 186 is quite a step up for Palpatine, and this certainly makes me think that Chain Lightning is a much better ability than even I originally thought, and I originally thought it was pretty powerful. Then another big jump to 2.95 seconds, we have Yoda, who has a DPS of 254 per second. Now this is starting to get into actually some really good DPS, especially compared to the Troopers edition that we did last week. Not much more to say here. We all know that Yoda has a pretty slow swing speed, so this is kind of expected, coming in at the number 25th spot. Then very surprisingly is Rey at the 24th spot, with 2.86 seconds to kill Kylo, and a DPS of 262, and that's with her Insight ability. Now I honestly believe Rey could melt villains, but I didn't realise that she was actually much slower than all the other heroes and villains that we have in the game. So that certainly came as a surprise for me. And then moving on, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi at the 23rd spot with 2.78 seconds to kill Kylo, and a DPS of 269. Not really much of a surprise for me here, as I always knew Obi-Wan Kenobi's strong point wasn't really his attack damage, but rather his defensive ability. So we're going to move on to the 22nd spot, which is another hero who doesn't really come as much of a surprise, even in spite of his recent buffs. It is Kylo Ren at the 22nd spot with 2.64 seconds to kill Luke and 284 damage per second. Now, I know he got some recent buffs, and honestly, I might have expected him to be higher, but I think we all know that Kylo's strong point, once again, isn't damage per second. That's going to be a regular theme for the bottom few results here, but instead that his particular strong points come in being able to control his enemies, and in some way acts as another kind of support hero. Then at the 21st space, we have Count Dooku, which is actually a genuine surprise. Obviously, this isn't Count Dooku with Duelist and Exposed Weakness. Don't worry, that's going to come later, and we all know that can 3-shot heroes, so that is going to be extremely quick. However, this one comes in at 2.6 seconds, which is just under Kylo, and is 288 damage per second, which is actually pretty slow, to be honest. You'd expect Count Dooku to be able to do a lot better than Kylo Ren, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Rey, but it's only very marginal. But moving on, we come to Bossk again. This is just Bossk with his regular roll B at 2.32 seconds. Now the actual recording we did was a bit longer, but I missed a couple of headshots, because actually when you get hit in the head with Bossk's roll B, you actually reel back, so it was very hard to get those consecutive headshots on Luke, so I did cut out one of the body shots, so so that it kind of totals off to what it should be if you manage to get that many consecutive headshots, at which point you kill Luke in 2.32 seconds, which is actually a bit of a jump down from Count Dooku, but still in the millisecond zone, and his DPS is 3.23. So, if you want to deal high amounts of damage and you've got the aim, remember Bossk's Roby actually does more than Bossk's grenades. Then at number 19, which is actually a bit of a surprise for me as well, I thought Chewie would do a lot better, but Chewie comes in with 2.16 seconds, which is still pretty fast, and he is basically joint with Luke Skywalker, who comes in at 2.15 seconds, with Chewie at 347 damage per second and Luke Skywalker at 348 damage per second. So Chewie, actually you'd expect him to melt heroes a lot quicker. Obviously, once again, this is not the maximum Chewie power, this is regular Chewie without his OP mode, as I call it, or Furious Bowcaster. But it turns out that his regular weapon, even with 3 bolts to the head, isn't actually that powerful as we thought. Then at the jump to 17th place, or basically 16th as well, we have Darth Maul and Darth Vader, because Darth Vader comes in with 2.12 seconds and 353 damage per second, and Darth Maul with 2.11 and 355 damage per second, so these are basically the same result again. 16th on our list is still actually pretty far down, although consider that some heroes have some absurd damage per second, especially in the head, so maybe this will actually value blaster heroes over lightsaber ones, even if the lightsaber ones do get bonus from behind. So I don't think it's too bad for Darth Maul or Darth Vader. Darth Vader definitely has the advantage of having more health regularly and being able to obviously boost his health, so damage isn't his main thing, even though he is a heavy striker. And Darth Maul obviously has the advantage of being very agile, so these are actually pretty good numbers. Looking at the time right now, I feel like we have to power through this list, so I am going to say less than usual, but I hope you're alright with that. So we're going to go with Finn's pistol at 2.08 seconds with 360 damage per second. Obviously, pistol to the head, you get a damage multiplier to the head, which I think is greater than a damage multiplier to the back from a lightsaber. And then at the 14th place, we have Captain Phasma with 2.07 seconds and 362 damage per second, basically the same as Finn, just same stuff applies. Anakin Skywalker then at exactly 2 seconds flat with 375 damage per second, and Anakin thankfully isn't so high up on this list, although take note that this is actually 3rd highest of all saber users and the best on the light side, so still please nerf him. Dice please, I seriously lose my sanity fighting Anakin. And then we have Finn's regular blaster, which is actually pretty powerful to the head with 1.96 seconds and 382 damage per second, and then we step things up to 1.84 seconds and the 11th spot with Lando Calrissian at 407 damage per second, and just missing the top 10, but he's basically the same as Iden Versio with 1.83 seconds and 409 damage per second. Both Iden and Lando can obviously melt people in the head, and this just goes to show that we have places to go, ladies and gentlemen. This list gets insane very quickly, and take note, we're already pretty much past the point of the highest DPS that you can get out of regular troopers. Now we move on to the 2nd highest saber user, and the highest saber user who doesn't use abilities to get such a high DPS, and this is going to be General Grievous at the number 9 spot with 1.8 seconds and 416 damage per second, which is a lot, and yes, it's going to go up from here because we have Boba Fett's Rocket Barrage maxed out at number 8, which takes 1.7 seconds, or would do, to kill Luke, as it actually runs out before you manage to kill him, but it gets close enough that I just compensated with the DPS to put this on the list. And then we move on to number 7, which is Chewie in his OP mode. It's Furious Bowcaster, and it will absolutely demolish any opponent, so remember, if you're General Grievous, even that kind of DPS can't go up against a Chewie using Furious Bowcaster. And then number 6, we actually have Boba Fett, who actually has a higher DPS from his regular blaster to the head than his Rocket Barrage even when it's maxed out, and that's at 1.42 seconds to kill Luke and 528 damage per second. So if Kylo freezes someone and Boba's there, that person's completely done. Next up, we have, just scraping into the top 5, Han Solo with 1.24 seconds, and obviously we know Han Solo's a DPS beast, and he does 604 damage per second, which is insane. Hitting the 600 barrier mark is ridiculous because Han Solo can actually take out Boba within a second, which is quite frankly insane. And then we have Leia Organa at the number 4 spot. Now, I obviously know that her defender pistol is an absolute beast to the head and in close quarters, but honestly I didn't think she was that great of a hero, but now she's starting to change my mind with 1.18 seconds to kill Kylo and 635 damage per second, which is, I know I'm saying insane and ludicrous and all that kind of stuff way too much, but yes, it's completely insane. And then before we break the top 3, I'll give you a little teaser for what could potentially be in our reinforcement episode. We have the B2 Super Battle Droid with his overload ability on, takes 1.12 seconds with 669 damage per second, and if you want to see more reinforcements like this, make sure to leave a comment and stay subscribed. But if we move on to the top 3, we have Leia breaking the top 3 with her rapid fire and 1.06 seconds, so basically a second, to kill Kylo, and 707 damage per second, which is ridiculous. Her rapid fire to the head deals a lot of damage. Honestly, I thought her defender pistol did more, so this is kind of a surprise for me. And then we have Han Solo's sharpshooter ability, which does output a lot of damage. It has the downfall of making you stand still for a very long amount of time. However, the damage is undisputable as being very, very good, taking 1.02 seconds to kill Kylo and 735 damage per second. And then, finally, at our number 1 spot, breaking the 1 second mark, we have the one and only 3-shotter Count Dooku, because obviously with his exposed weakness and duelist, we've covered this before, he turns into a god who can just 3-shot any hero. It's very simple, 765 damage per second, 0.98 seconds to kill Luke. This is insane. Ridiculous. But most importantly, it's something you want to watch out for when you're playing as another hero on the battlefront and you come across a Count Dooku. Be aware that this man will destroy you if given the opportunity. Okay, that's going to round up that video. A lot of surprises there, especially Leia Organa actually being the top DPS of all heroes that obviously aren't using abilities, which is actually really impressive. But I know that was a bit of a stretch, and congrats to anyone who made it through this. So I'll end it off quickly. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more content like this. Bye.